Hey, I'm Slash, and you're watching Heavy Consequence.
I wanted to ask you about the recording process. I understand that it started before the pandemic and you regrouped during the pandemic. And if you can just take me through that timeline.
Right. Well, some of the songs, I'd say there's 10 songs on the record. 6 of them were written around 2018, 2019. A lot of that was written on the road because I just always carry my guitar with me and uh, come up with ideas in dressing rooms and hotel rooms and tour buses and whatnot. And then I sometimes bring those ideas to sound check and we'll work up a riff and like over the course of a week, take one idea and work on it every day at sound check for all those shows and work the things up, and we tape all that. And so when the tour is over, sort of compile all those ideas, and then we get together and jam them out and do sort of pre-production and go in the studio and do the next record. And that's how this would have been. But this time we had all of a sudden the pandemic sort of, presented itself. And so what I did was I found those 6 songs from that we'd written previously, and made demos and sort of put together loose arrangements, and I sent those to Myles and he started working on lyrics and stuff. And at the same time I wrote a whole bunch of new material, but at the same time I was insisting that this will only be a 10-song record. I've been trying to do something under 12 songs my whole career and haven't been able to do it, so I insisted this was only going to be 10 songs on the record, on this record. So what I did was, on the new material, I just picked the stuff that was directly influenced by the pandemic, that was written as a result of what was going on. And so 4 of those songs made it onto this record.
And I understand that you revealed that all of you, except one member, actually contracted COVID during the recording process. And
well, yeah.
What was that? I mean, what was that experience like?
Well, we decided that we were going to work with Dave Cobb and record at his studio over at RCA Studio A in Nashville, right? So we decided, okay, as a precaution, we'll take a tour bus over there so that we weren't flying commercially and whatnot. And everybody tested negative and got on the bus and had a great time driving across the country to get to Nashville. And we set up and recorded the album basically live, right? And so that was done in 5 days. So on the 6th day, Myles tells me that he just tested positive. We have no idea how it happened, but he tested positive. So everybody has to test. And turns out Brent's positive and Todd's positive. So those guys go, we're renting this house in Nashville that we're all living in. So those guys go into quarantine over there. And meanwhile, so Frank and myself and Dave Cobb and Eddie, the engineer, are sitting there going, well, we got some overdubs to do. Otherwise we might as well start mixing, because we had all the vocals, or at least we had all the lead vocals. So we started, spend a day doing some overdubs, and then all of a sudden I tested positive. So we sent Frank home, said, you don't need to be here for any of this anyway, so might as well go. So I went into quarantine. So as I was in quarantine, Todd and Myles were starting to feel better. So we have some mics and recording equipment sent over to the house that we're staying in, and those guys sang background vocals in the guest house at this place. Anyway, so then Brent's feeling better, so he went down and did percussion, and then I got better and we all got together and mixed the record basically together as a band manually, which was really cool. Something I haven't done since the 80s, where you use analog gear and you actually put your fingers on the faders, press play, and move everything accordingly. Anyway, so that was how it happened. But we got through it, and it didn't take, I think it probably added a week to our schedule. But it was an experience. It was an adventure for sure.
Yeah, and the first single, The River Is Rising, is a very anthemic introduction to the album. Can you talk about that song a bit, and the decision to put that out there as the first kind of taste of new music?
Well, Rivers Rising was definitely a piece of music that was influenced by the times, you know, like what was going on at the time and the frustration of the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. And lyrically, I think it's very much about the same thing, and also about the sort of politicizing of everything that was going on at the time. It was one of the last pieces of music I wrote before we actually went into we actually went into pre-production. So it had just a certain energy and attitude to it that when we played it, recorded it, it just seemed like a no-brainer for the first song, like in your face, here we are kind of thing.
Cool. And another song that stood out to me was Spirit Love. For a lot of the instrumentation on that, there's a little bit of a Middle Eastern vibe on that one too. It's a little different from a lot of the other songs on the album. I'd like to hear more about that one.
Okay, that musically, that's another one that was very much inspired by what was happening at the moment. And the intro part sort of came out of nowhere. I remember sitting in my studio and having the idea and then working it out. And that sort of really influenced the whole rest of the song as far as the vibe of it was concerned. And then I sent it to Myles and ended up writing a lyric that was roughly about having sex with a ghost, kind of a thing. Anyway, yeah, it's just a cool vibe. And when we were when we took off to Nashville, I had the idea of taking a sitar with me to possibly use that for the intro. And so we recorded the song with guitar, and then I went back and redid it with the sitar plugged into my Marshall, which made it sound pretty like almost like something was dying. But anyway, it came out sort of cool.
Yeah, and yeah, very cool song. And the most recent single, Call of the Dogs, is really a heavy, fast-paced rocker. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that one as well.
Yeah, well, whenever we go into the studio, like to start pre-production, work on new material, I like to just find something to jam on, that's sort of just get the lead out and just play something without focusing on something specific. And we were all so anxious to get out of the house that riff came up really quickly, and it was just really sort of like getting your aggression out, and it probably came together in about 5 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention one more song, the closing track, Fell Back to Earth. Yeah. And it gave me all sorts of David Bowie vibes. Even,
really?
That's even Myles' vocals on it were a little bit of Bowie, and then the song title itself almost sounds like a Bowie type song. But I wanted to hear about that one as well. I don't know if you got that too, but
no, there was never the thought of that's a completely original concept you just came up with. But that's cool. I love David, and it's funny you bring back comparison to Man Who Fell to Earth is what I'm thinking, because that's my mom actually did the close for that movie, and so that's ironic. No, it was just a piece of music that I wrote right before the beginning of the Living the Dream tour back in 2019. And it was just a really cool kind of melody, and it was something that got developed over time. I had the intro thing, and then I had a verse, and I sent it to Myles, and he wrote some lyrics, and it sort of came up with a loose arrangement or whatnot, but it really came together in the studio when we were in Nashville. We just set about recording it one day, and we definitely made some major changes in the arrangement that were for the better, and it came out cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I know you had that relationship with Bowie as a kid, so that's, for some reason, I don't know, the sound of it and everything. And it would have been his 75th birthday earlier this month, Bowie.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, since I just mentioned it, I wanted to get your thoughts on your kind of memories of him and just what his music meant to you as an artist.
Well, I mean, David was great. And, it's like, I mean, it was one of those people that, my mom sort of, brought around, I guess is the best way to put it. But he was really, really cool. I got on with him really well. And I maintained a relationship with him all the way up until before he passed away. He sort of disappeared before he passed away. I didn't hear from him for a while. But, he was a sweetheart. He was definitely bigger than life. And it was with David that I was introduced to 70s mega rock stardom. I saw a lot of people at that time at different, like at the Forum and stuff like that in LA. And that was when rock stars were rock stars, and David definitely was one. But he was a very down to earth, very creative and sensitive individual. And I liked him a lot. And his music, that you just made me think. Young Americans was fucking awesome.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about Slash and Myles being the first band to release an album through Gibson Records.
Right.
What that experience is like, and also if you can talk about this limited edition guitar that's coming out with the album as well.
Yeah, one of the perks about doing a record through a record guitar company, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, first on the collaboration with Gibson, it was just a really great thing to happen. I was working on, getting into the studio to do this record, and I've been my own label ever since 2010, and so I was thinking about who was going to distribute the record and this and that, and I got the phone call that Gibson was interested to do a label and have me be the first release on it. And it just seemed like a perfect marriage. I know all the players at Gibson, and I know how much integrity they have and what hard workers they are. And also, normally I would never sign with any of the big corporate labels, but this is a really music-based sort of grassroots kind of thing. Even though it's a big company, it's been around for 100+ years, and it's all about music. Anyway, so it just seemed like a perfect thing to do, and it's been great. I mean, they've been really working this thing. It hasn't even come out yet, but they've been doing a great job. And then we're also working with BMG, so it's a all around cool thing. But it's going to be also really interesting to see which artists they're going to sign as we go down the road into the future. Anyway, so that's been awesome. And then the actual special edition sort of guitar package is going to be really cool. And the guitar itself is a great Gibson USA Les Paul Standard, and it's got nice specs on it, and it's a limited thing, but for those people who actually go out and get it, it's a really cool guitar.
Cool, very cool. And you're getting ready to get on the road with the Conspirators, hopefully launching in February.
Right.
And you recently had the experience of touring with Guns N' Roses during the pandemic, and you were one of the few successful bands to get through it without postponing or canceling. A lot of bands were hit hard in the summer and fall, where not only did they, band members themselves contracted, you saw that with Kiss and with Korn and with some other bands. What did you learn from that experience going into this tour coming up with the Conspirators that you can apply to touring during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, it's all a crapshoot. We were really, really diligent. We had a very tight bubble situation going on, and we kept to ourselves. We didn't have any guests. We didn't have any after-show parties. We basically went from the venue to the hotel to the next venue. We were fortunate, but we just kept a really tight lid on it. So it's going to be the same kind of thing for the Conspirators, where there's absolutely no fun to be had outside of playing the show. And that just seems to be life at the moment, but it's worth it, to be able to go out there and play. And then you just got to cross your fingers and hope that because it's the whole organization all has to follow the same guidelines. And so you just hope for the best.
And you guys did a great job, even between the Conspirators and GNR, about bringing some of these kind of young, kind of classic rock revival bands out on tour with you. I caught you when you Dirty Honey opened for you on the last run, and then Wolfgang Van Halen His Mammoth WVH opened for Guns, and then there's bands like Greta Van Fleet. And I wanted to hear what you thought about these bands that are kind of bringing back that classic guitar sound and what it means for like the present and future of rock.
I mean, it's exciting for me because rock and roll has been very limited in the commercial arena, and so it's nice to hear some stripped down, like 4 or 5 piece bands come out. And I'm hoping that it's a trend it's a groundswell that's gonna have an impact. Yeah, so it's been a positive, but yeah, it was great. Yeah, Dirty Honey was one band that Conspirators toured with that was really good, and there was another one called Joyous Wolf, and both those bands are actually getting airplay now, and it's exciting.
Very cool. And one more for you. I think last we spoke when we were talking about living the dream. I know we were talking about your production company, Slasher Films. I know you're a big horror guy. I wanted to see. I know the pandemic hit a lot of production companies hard and stuff like that. But I wanted to see if you had anything in the works in terms of film and TV.
Yeah, actually, funnily enough, managed to complete a movie and during the pandemic, and actually get the music done for it and the production itself completely finished. And so that's a Canadian release, or it's a Canadian production company that I worked with. It wasn't my own production company. It was a company called Raven Banner, and also it was written by a guy. Well, it was directed by a guy from Rue Morgue magazine, this guy Rodrigo, and so we have actually got this thing finished. I flew to Canada recently and saw it, and it's going out for the festivals as soon as the festivals start to open up. So it's funny. Since 2013, I've been working on trying to get some horror movies done, and it was actually during the pandemic that I actually got one finished. So it's called The Breach, and it should be out this year.